Okay, we are doing a lot of work on this Blazer. It's going to be a couple part different videos, different series. Today, the first thing that's up right now is going to be an AC swap or an air conditioning add-on to this Blazer. So this is an 84 K5 Blazer. It's a Chevy 350 with an SM465 4-speed manual, and it never came with air conditioning. It just has heat. I want this thing to be a lot more of like an overlanding type vehicle. I'm putting a 5-speed transmission in it, add air conditioning. A couple other things are going to happen to it as well. But this is going to be more of like my road tripping or overlanding vehicle, and I want it to have air conditioning. Now I have this other Blazer, the white one over here. This is an 87 K5 Blazer, 350 with a 700 R4. 700 R4 already crapped out, I already replaced it, but this thing came equipped with air conditioning. So I'm going to swap everything AC related from this 87 over to my, well they're both mine, but from this one over from the 87 to the 84 AC wise, and all the heater only stuff is going to get swapped into the 87. Step one is I'm going to start removing all of this stuff down in here. Let's see. Yeah, this stuff right here, this is the AC. There's a bunch of brackets on there, it's a compressor. I'm going to start pulling all that off. I'll get the belts off, and then I'll just leave everything loose because I want to get the front end or the clip off so I can get the condenser out. And then I'll go and start unbuckling everything back there by the blower motor and the dryer. And once everything's kind of loose, then I'll start taking stuff apart on the 84 and we'll start transferring them, hopefully. So let's get into that. We're at the point where I've got the compressor pretty much loosened. If you see, it's hard to move it without shaking my hands, but the belt was pretty loose. I don't want to take it all the way off yet, but it was just a bunch of 9/16 and then like a couple 15 millimeter bolts. There's a bunch of brackets. There's a couple on here, an adjuster, one there, a rod that goes back down to the manifold, some on the back side for this bracket, an adjusting one on the bottom here, and I've got them all loose enough. So I think at this point I am going to move on to trying to get maybe the condenser out or the blower motor stuff and get that stuff moved out of the way. So here's where we're at. The rest of the AC stuff over there, the compressor is all very loose. One thing, please, I doubt anyone's probably ever gonna do this, but if you do, take pictures of this stuff, just so you know which way the brackets go back together. I'm sure you get that, pretty self-explanatory. But now, I moved on to the condenser, and I've basically got the condenser out. The top line is hooked up to a soft line, so it can bend around, but the bottom for this condenser is a metal line. It's a hard line, and it runs all the way back to, I think this is the low pressure or maybe the high pressure side of my AC system. So I'm going to take it apart because I'm having trouble. Obviously I can't wiggle it around too much being a hard line. I'm going to disconnect it right here and here, pull these two guys apart, and that should pretty much allow me to just pick the condenser up and slide it out. Now it's got 2 mounting points and 4 support areas. I did have to take the brackets off for the radiator. So it goes like this. This is the radiator, bolts in here. It's got a rubber piece, and then it actually clips to the front, and that's what holds the radiator in. Then all I did was do that on both sides, push this radiator and fan shroud forward, get access to the condenser. Condenser is held in really with only 2 bolts, and it's these guys. They go on top of the condenser right here. See that? These rubber piece slides right over that, and then this sits in there. And this little hole goes into one of these holes on your core support, and you take those both out. They are, I think they're, what are they? 10 millimeter for those guys. These are 12 on the radiator, but this stuff on the condenser is 10, and I just have them sitting right in here. It won't hurt to put them back where they go, but After that, there are additional little rubber guys that the condenser is sitting on at the bottom. You can see it right there. So make sure you grab those when you pull this out. But I'm gonna disconnect the line and I'll slide the condenser out and then probably just set it somewhere over there. Here's a quick tech tip. So you see what I'm doing here? That's this line we were just looking at. There's a nut on the left side and there's a nut on the right side. You don't want to just put one on one side or the other and crank on it. You're going to end up bending and breaking this line. Get a wrench on each so you can hold them and support them, and then push one while you're holding the other, so all the pressure is on those threads, not anywhere on these lines that kink and break them. Just a heads up, you're going to have O-rings in between these connections on AC systems. So like that black guy there, just be aware of it. I'm going to replace all of these. This system was totally evacuated. It wasn't blowing any hot air. The clutch wouldn't, or it wasn't blowing any cold air. Clutch wouldn't engage. So it needs to be retrofitted to 134A and recharged anyway. So there was a leak. So I'm going to replace all these O-rings, but just keep in mind they are there. Know where they are and don't lose them, especially if you want to reuse them. Time for another update. I pulled the dryer out off those two lines. It's sitting on the ground right there, just so it would be easier. And I've got these lines, I wiggled this underneath the grounds for the alternator and probably some other things there. And then the other line is totally free. So all of the AC lines are free. Dryer is out. Now what I'm gonna do next, the condenser's out. It's already sitting on the ground over there. And I grabbed all the rubber pieces to hold it in. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take this completely off and I'm gonna bolt it up to my truck. And then I'm gonna see what I gotta do with all the pulleys and these little belts. I'm probably going to have to pull some belts and pulleys over and swap them. So that's the game plan. I really hope I don't have to pull the pulley on the front of the balancer, but we'll see. So I'm gonna get this all completely taken off and put on there. So I've got the AC out of the way. That's where it used to be. And on my truck, I have this piece, but I do not have this piece. This is on the back side and attaches some of the brackets for the AC. So I need to get this piece off. I gotta get that bolt out. And I think I'm going to grab this little thing as well, because it's got two slots for belts rather than just one, which my non-AC Blazer has only one. So I'm gonna try to swap this. I'm hoping this will just kind of pull right off. I may need a pulley puller, but we'll see. Right now I'm gonna try to move some more brackets over. So an update. This is the 84, the non-AC car. I've got the AC compressor all put in here. It's not completely tightened down. Everything lines up, and I wanted to give you a chance to look at the brackets that we're dealing with. This all came off the AC compressor. There is one long metal one that runs from up here and goes to the top of the intake manifold, a big bar. And then there is on the back side, we've got this bracket. And it goes all the way down to here for an adjustment for the power steering, and then it bolts onto the forwardmost stud of the exhaust manifold. And then there's a bolt here that goes to the back of the AC compressor, and then a little nut on this one that bolts up to the slide on the AC compressor. And that's basically it. There's a hole back here for one of your lines that run to your gas canister for the exhaust, or the gases, the fuel gases. Now one thing that I'm running into, and for some reason I didn't see this coming, is the pulleys. If you have an AC equipped, at least on the 87, the harmonic balancer has 3 rows for belts, and then the power steering has 2 rows. So this is where the power steering originally goes, and it lines right up with your AC. But on AC cars, it's got another groove for a pulley back here that just runs straight to the harmonic balancer, and that's really what pulls and spins the power steering pump. So let me go over here and show you what it actually looks like. This is what I'm talking about. See how there's 2 grooves? There's one groove here, for the AC belt, and then one groove here that runs straight to the harmonic balancer. I really do not want to take these pulleys off or the harmonic balancer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use just the AC belt. So I'm going to take off that power steering belt and I'm going to run just the AC belt that goes around the water pump, the harmonic balancer, the power steering, and then up through to the AC. And I'm going to see, I really don't think that's going to grip the power steering near enough, to be honest. I don't think it's going to work, but I don't want to go through the trouble of pulling these things off and maybe stripping stuff and swapping the pulleys over if I don't have to. So I'm going to see if it works. I'll let you guys know. I think it's probably going to squeak pretty bad and not spin the power steering that well. But that's where I'm at. The other thing is all my belts on my 84, the truck that I'm keeping, all these little belts are pretty much dry rotted and cracked. Here is a good example. This came off of the other truck, but you can see those cracks in there. They're all like that. The ones that came off my 85 are actually worse. However, the power steering and the AC belt is the closest to the engine. So I got to take off my smog pump belt, my alternator belt, all before I can do the AC belt. So I'm just going to replace all those belts when I do it. But they are pretty straightforward to take them off. It's just a bunch of sliding, adjusting bolts that look like that. It's that guy right there. That's for the alternator. And there's a similar one down on the bottom for the smog pump. So I'm going to take those off, get some new belts, and then I'll put this back together. I'm going to get a new condenser and a new dryer when I do this, but after, I'll probably order that online. So I'll start working on the blower motor stuff after I get these belts on.